Hello all, this is Barbara Mann from Your Empowered You, and welcome to our video on how to maintain high employee retention rates, which on the flip side of the coin just means how to maintain low turnover rates, employee turnover rates. So in this video we talk about what are some acceptable levels of retention rates or turnover rates, what's the impact of turnover, what does it say about your team, department, or organization, and then finally, what are some tips on how to maintain a healthy retention rate? So let's talk about acceptable retention rates. And it's one of those things that it really depends on the department and the actual role. So some departments, 65% retention rate may be completely acceptable. And retention rates are usually measured year over year. So that means how many people did you start with, January 1st? And how many people do you still have that following year, January 1st? And that's how you measure retention rate. How many people left the organization? So you basically just do a calculation to determine that retention rate. But some departments and roles, 65% may be a great retention rate. In other departments or roles, 90% is acceptable. So there are some roles such as sales and call centers that usually have higher turnover rates. So 65%, that may be completely acceptable. It really depends on what your organization has determined is the acceptable level. And it really also varies at different levels of the organization. So you may have maybe senior management, your C execs. Usually the retention rates are a little bit higher. I mean, that makes sense because you think about you don't want to constantly have a change in senior management every year, because then things would just be constantly changing all the time with the new visions coming in. Middle management, the turnover rates tend to be a little bit lower. And then individual contributor level, again, it varies by the role. So, some individual contributor roles, it could be 95% is acceptable for retention rate, or it could be, 70%. It really does depend on the various roles of the organization. But the bottom line is that each department, each team, they usually have some sort of KPI, key performance indicator, or goal or objective around turnover. It's usually on managers' types of goals and objectives for their measuring their kind of performance. So let's talk about some of the impacts of turnover and some of the potential positive impacts. So organizations are going to have turnover, and it's healthy to have it because it allows fresh ideas to enter into the organization. It allows movement in your organization. So it's not like you don't want zero turnover. That's not necessarily the best thing either. So positive turnover, is good when maybe there are people who just aren't the right fit for either the role or the organization. Maybe they're not the right cultural fit. Maybe they have performance issues. Obviously, other types of positive turnover is when there's egregious acts done, and you don't want that impacting your morale or your culture. So it's not like all turnover is bad. You do need some turnover. It's healthy for an organization to have turnover, obviously. But what happens when there's a lot of turnover, especially all at once, or it's continual? So some of the negative aspects of turnover is, or when's it negative? Like maybe that wasn't good that person left. So if somebody leaves and they just go to a lateral move to join a different company for the same role, that's not necessarily good turnover. That's negative turnover, because basically they're just taking the same role in a different company. What's that really saying? It's not good when a department or a team has consistently high turnover. Like most of the teams are pretty consistent, but you got this one team that's just constantly having continual turnover. It's not good. Some of those impacts that it may have is morale. It impacts morale. When you have turnover in your organization, it's going to impact morale or in your team. It affects the other people who are there. Because you've kind of established a bond with people, and it's like a friend leaving the organization, so it impacts morale. Their work has to go somewhere, so it affects work distribution. And people know that it takes time to hire, train, and a new person to become efficient in a role. So who's carrying the load while all that time is going by? It's the people who are there, right? So even if someone gives a 2-week notice, and even if you hire somebody the day that they put in a notice, it still takes a lot of time to bring somebody in and become efficient in their role. So the other impacts on that, it could impact your results, and it could impact your key performance indicators, because obviously the efficiency of the operation isn't at 100%. So what's the indirect message of high turnover say about your operation? It can say a lot of things, and this is where management and HR really need to take an honest look of what's going on with high turnover. It could be that there's low morale in your operation, and people just aren't happy there. They don't like it. That's usually an indirect message of high turnover, that your morale, it has a problem somewhere. Like, what's going on with the morale? It's low, people are unhappy, maybe they're not engaged. It could be a reflection of poor management. Maybe there's someone who's a micromanagement, and as we know, nobody likes micromanagement. You don't want someone constantly questioning what you're doing or not giving you the freedom to make decisions. It could be a lack of direction or leadership. Maybe you have a manager who just kind of lets you go without any kind of direction, and then maybe they come in and say, oh, that's not what I wanted, and they're not really leading you, and you don't really know what's expected of you. That creates an anxiety for employees, and that can lead to turnover. It could be an indication of unhealthy culture. Maybe you have a bunch of people who have poor attitudes, or there's lack of teamwork. Maybe there's a perception of favoritism going on. Maybe there's a lack of development or promotional opportunities. There's all kinds of things of what does the indirect message of high turnover, what's it telling your operation? It's something that should be taken very seriously. Like when somebody leaves, you want to know, why are they leaving? Because sometimes, again, it's positive. But sometimes, and a lot of times, it isn't positive. And you really want to know, why did somebody leave, and how can we prevent that going forward to make sure our current employees are engaged and satisfied. And it's very important for employee satisfaction. So is having low turnover always positive? And the answer is no. It isn't always positive. And the reason that I say that is because you can have a manager who the whole team just loves this manager. I mean, they think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But wonder if that manager isn't performing well. Wonder if the whole unit is not performing well. There could be some underlying leadership issues there. Is the manager doing some of their work? Is the manager not holding them accountable? Something's going on if there's low performance but no turnover going on. That's usually what's going on with the manager. Why is it like that? So not having low turnover or no turnover usually is a good sign, but sometimes it isn't, and that's where a higher up manager needs to take a look at the entire unit to see what's going on. But let's talk about healthy retention rates. Why is that so great for an operation? Because you have higher production usually, you have highly engaged employees, you have development opportunities, there's promotional opportunities, morale is high. You have happy, satisfied, valued, empowered employees. So those usually go hand in hand with higher and healthy retention rates. When people are happy and they're productive, they tend to stay, right? I mean, everybody wants to be in that great work environment where they feel valued, they feel like they're being developed, they feel like they're being empowered, they have promotional opportunities, there's healthy culture promoting from within, the morale's high, the teamwork's high. You stay in those environments. They are, they're not common, but when you're in one, you know it and you want to stay. So how do you maintain those high and healthy retention rates? Again, you don't want 100% retention rate year over year over year. That's not necessarily good, because you want healthy and fresh ideas coming through the door. And if you have 0 retention rate, that means there's not a lot of promotional opportunities, not a lot of growth going on there. So that's not a good indication either. But how do we maintain high retention rates? It all starts with the hiring. Hiring managers must take the time and be disciplined to hire the right person for the organization and for the job. My own personal belief is that you can always train someone on the technical side. You can't necessarily train someone for a culture. So being a good cultural fit for your operation is darn important. I mean, if the position is a highly technical position, you need to hire for that as well. But hiring for your culture is really, 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 really important. That's my opinion. The next phase on hiring, the next step on how you retain the retention rate is onboarding and training. Take the time to properly onboard people. Make them feel welcome. Make them feel valued. Make sure that they're trained. Now, are you going to be able to train them on every single thing before they're proficient at their job? No, of course not. But you want to make sure that someone feels comfortable in their surrounding. A lot of times people leave an organization within the first couple of months because they don't feel they were trained properly. So you want to make sure you avoid that. So we've got hiring, we've got onboarding and training. The next thing is make sure that employees understand the expectations. The expectations must be clear. A lot of employees leave organizations because the expectations aren't clear. They need to know what the expectations are right away. What's their goals and objectives? What's my expectations? And make sure that you check in regularly to know where they stand. People want to know where they stand. Make sure this is a regular occurrence with the manager and their team. Open and honest communication is another factor in high retention rates. When you have truly open and honest communication, it really starts instilling that trust in the environment. And make sure there's two-way feedback. So I'm not just saying that a manager is giving feedback to the direct reports. The direct reports feel comfortable that they're in a trusted environment, that they can provide constructive feedback as well, and that it will be that they'll be listened to and something will be done about what they're saying. Allow people to problem solve. This is important because the employees, the direct reports, individual contributors have a ton of great ideas. I mean, that is where you get your best solutions, is from the people who are actually doing the work. So allow for problem solving and trust their decision making. That is empowerment, trusting their decisions. Now, again, are people going to make mistakes? Yes, they're going to make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Allowing for the people's mistakes is critical. So, problem solving, the decisions, the allowing for mistakes, the trust, that all goes into maintaining people feeling like they're in this very empowered group of people, and they want to stay in those types of environments. Allow your employees to have development opportunities, and this is important. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a next promotion going on, but allow for development opportunities other than just their job. People want to be good at their jobs, and they will be good at their jobs, but allow for other opportunities as well, so they can stretch their wings on whatever that may look like. Maybe they can mentor and train and coach other employees. Maybe they can get into backstopping a leader and taking on some leadership opportunities. Whatever that looks like, allow for development opportunities where you're challenging people. Not necessarily creating more work for them, but just challenging them so that they're spreading their wings a little bit. Another aspect on high retention rates is promoting from within. That's important because if employees see people from the outside constantly being brought in for promotional opportunities, that demoralizes people. So allow for those promotions from within. Allow your employees to explore other departments. If there are other departments that are in your organization, allow them to explore and maybe apply for lateral moves in other departments. That's healthy. It's learning something about different in the organization. That's good for the organization. We talked about listening to employees, and that's important. Listening to your employees and really not poo-pooing their ideas or or poo-pooing how they feel, listen to them. And if there's something that can be done to, help a process, implement it. Implement those things. If you can't, make sure that you have a healthy conversation with that employee. Another aspect of high retention rates is holding everybody accountable. And, some people might think, oh, holding everyone accountable, that means that you're a big meanie. That isn't necessarily what I mean. That just means when you're an empowered employee, you're also an accountable employee. So making sure that everybody meets minimum expectations, that if they need help, then help them. But make sure that they're held accountable, and everybody is held accountable from leadership to individual contributor on their performance. Again, when you're an empowered employee, you accept that accountability, and you wear it with a badge of honor. Accountability is very important for retention rates, for high retention rates. And have fun. That's the last thing. Have fun with the team. We've been talking a lot about, kind of serious stuff, but having fun with the team and having team outings and other creative sort of bonding events and little creative things that you do in your office, bigger events, whatever it might look like, have some fun. People like to have fun. When you hear laughter in the workplace, I love hearing laughter in the workplace. It doesn't mean that people are lollygagging around and not taking their work seriously. Obviously there's a balance there, but that just means, they like the coworkers, they're having a good time, and especially if managers are involved in it, it's good. So have fun, have team creative team bonding events, employee of the month. Making sure that's fair, obviously, because if you don't do some of these things right, it could be viewed as favoritism. But you want to make sure that everybody feels valued. Every level of employee feels that they have a significant contribution to the organization, and that they're all part of this special, empowered, creative, problem-solving, helping team. And when you kind of establish that is how you keep your folks, and you have high retention rates. So let's wrap this up in a bow on how to maintain healthy retention rates and keep your turnover low. We talked about acceptable levels. They vary by role and department. So it's important to know, what is acceptable. What's an acceptable retention rate for your operation? We talked about that there are both positive and negative impacts to turnover. You have to have some turnover in your operation. You can't just have zero, because that means there's no growth going on and it gets a little stagnant. We talked about the indirect message behind turnover. What is it saying about your operation? Is it just the team? Is it the whole organization? Is it a certain level of the organization? What is the message telling you? We talked about healthy turnover. We talked about unhealthy turnover. So again, healthy turnover is perhaps there are performance issues, there's egregious acts, and obviously that is not necessarily good. We talked about unhealthy turnover, when someone goes into a lateral move and they leave the company just to go to a lateral move. That's not necessarily good turnover. That's unhealthy. That's telling you something, that there's something not right about the organization. And then finally, we talked about how to maintain healthy turnover rates. Really, it's about how do your employees feel? Do they feel empowered? Do they feel valued? Do they feel that they're being developed? Do they feel that they're being managed well without micromanagement? Do they understand the expectations? Do they feel like that they can rely on their coworkers and their management to really have their back? This is how you maintain healthy turnover rates. Trusting environments, open communication, two-way feedback, all those things go into a very healthy culture. It really comes down to what is the culture. If the culture's healthy, I guarantee you those turnover rates are going to be low and your retention rates are going to be high. So I hope you've enjoyed our short video on maintaining healthy employee retention rates, and for additional resources or to schedule a session with me, please visit my website at www.yourimpoweredyou.com. You can email me at bman@yourimpoweredyou.com, or you can give me a call at 916-633-2633. 2555. And I thank you very much and have a very empowered day.